To our Hayden Urban Renewal Agency Board meeting. It's April 8th. Could we call the meeting to order and could I have roll call, please?
Rhonda Mitchell.
Here.
Steve Meyer.
Here.
Colin Meehan.
Here.
Randy McIntyre. Michael Thayer.
Here.
Matt Roeder.
Here.
Joy Richards.
Here. Great, thank you. Let's stand for the pledges of allegiance, please. Matt, could I have you start us off?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, I'm calling for a conflict of interest. Hearing none, it's time for visitor public comments. Anybody? Hearing none, let's go to our consent calendar. I need approval for the minutes, bills, and financial reports.
Motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I seconded. Discussion. I saw there might be a little math error that I wanted to bring up. If I could find that page. Here it is. It's on the projected expenditures for the fiscal year. In our 2024, they didn't add the last two items to that line item.
That total?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or changes at all? I have a first and a second. Can I have a roll call vote for
Rhonda Mitchell.
yes?
Steve Meyer.
Yes.
Colin Meehan.
Yes.
Michael Thayer.
Yes.
Matt Roeder.
Yes.
Joy Richards.
Yes.
Great, thank you. New business. First on the agenda is our lease for our property at 58 East Orchard.
Yes, so I just had a couple questions for you. So Steve and Colin, they went by last week and took a tour of it. And at the last meeting, we had kind of batted around getting some of the items in the inspection report fixed, using the property management company to help us fix that. But I haven't done that yet because these two are going to go take a look and see if they agreed that it was worth continuing on with the lease. So my questions are, do we want a year-long lease or do we want to still be month to month? And I think that's really my only question at this point because I think we've answered the rest of them that we're not going to require a damage deposit and stuff like that.
Maybe I misremembered. Were we going to ask the tenants what they would prefer, or did I misunderstand? Okay, sorry.
I got the impression they don't want to go anywhere anytime soon.
Okay.
Let us give you a little summary of what we walked through and saw. It's a 5-bedroom house built with a number of additions over time. Years ago, it was occupied by Frank Canale, who was the mayor at one time of Hayden. And he was a fireplace installer. I knew Frank because he put fireplace in the house where we were living. It was new at the time, in 1974. The house has suffered from a lot of wear and tear, and nobody doing little handyman tasks that every household needs tending to. Whether that's a shortfall of the previous property manager or the succession of tenants, or whether they had authority to fix little things if the owner, us, would pay for the materials, I don't know. But there are a lot of problems there that aren't rocket science to be repaired or fixed or expensive. They just suffer from lack of attention. Would you agree with that? I
Absolutely.
mean, if you and I lived there, why, most of that stuff would have been fixed long ago. Not much to it.
Pretty minor in nature, for the most part.
There's a couple of issues which are a little scary. I thought the biggest one was we went into a bedroom that the story was reported that when they occupied the home, all the electrical outlets worked, but now only one works. Well, that's a bad outcome. So how it's wired or what the problem is, we don't know, but it could be dangerous. That ought to be fixed. In fact, all the electrical stuff in the building needs some attention. As I recall, the panel is pretty new, but who knows what the rest of the wiring is like. And it could have been do-it-yourselfers by various owners over time, who knows. Colin pointed out that it ought to have smoke alarms in it. And didn't you say you didn't ever see any?
They're not.
Yeah. What else?
The list I got while we were there, pest control was another one that came up, things in the attic, things around the property, leak on the water heater, the bathroom faucet just had, it wasn't a drip, it didn't turn off. So they used the valve under the sink to turn it on and off. They requested all these repairs through the previous property manager with no response or no feedback at all.
It's the cold water side, and you try to turn it off and it runs with a stream a little smaller than a pencil, continuously. Well, it's just unfathomable that a property manager would do that, including our present guy. I don't know what his requests have been or what his instructions are, but there's no excuse for not fixing something as simple and cheap as a bathroom faucet to solve that. So
I don't know if the request has been made since we've switched property managers.
I
I
don't know
think
that.
the
It
tenants
hasn't.
kind of gave
Yeah.
up at some point on getting any of this done. Overall, they liked the house, but there was a number of things they would either like to do or, again, not major, but at least make it safe and livable.
yeah, the refrigerator is not old, it's pretty decent. The stove works, although it's a glass top stove and somebody dropped something on it, so one corner of it's got a crack. Microwave, I think there are two of them in there. Furnace is pretty new.
The furnace is pretty new.
Yeah, we just took care of that. They
Yeah.
called us on that and
And
we had a water issue
the
outside.
furnace installation
There
fell
was a
short.
broke,
It's a
yeah.
condensing furnace, but there was no provision for getting rid of the condensate water. So the tenant drilled a hole in the floor himself and runs the water down the hole, which is not a bad solution, but unfathomable that the installer didn't fix that.
Yeah.
And that the property manager who came by afterward didn't say, whoa, what'd you forget here? Put a condensate pump in it or drill a hole in the floor, do something. But the lady said that when the furnace installer left, the floor flooded with the water. Well, it's just, I don't know much about residential property management, but I found it unfortunate. But I think the house with some modest money can be fixed. I'm reluctant to take it out of the housing inventory in our town that's already struggling for older, less expensive property. And we talked about how to fix it, and one solution, well, if we demolish it, then we have an empty lot and no income. If we spend some of the income money to fix it, then we have an asset that might last for as long as we are indeterminate about changing the use. So I was going to suggest that we consider saying to the property manager, why don't you take $1,000 a month out of the $1,600 a month and spend it on getting stuff done that needs to be done? Or since we aren't a particularly monthly cash-oriented organization, it doesn't matter. Just tell the property manager to make a list of what needs to be fixed and give us a price, and on approval, go get it done.
And most likely, it's not gonna take too long to catch up on the list of things we saw, so it wouldn't go on forever.
No.
And they were grateful to have that option to live there.
The lady who is the mother of the house, I thought was appreciative and conscientious. It's a mixed family. I think there are children there from at least 2 families, there's a bunch of teenage kids or older, a bunch. And then her roommate, I think, is a boyfriend, not a husband. That doesn't matter. But, and that person is a little handy at least. He's the one who solved, well, from what she said, solved the furnace problem. But they may also feel like, why should we invest our effort in this thing when the owner doesn't seem to be very interested? Which I think is a condemnation of us and our agent.
So now I think we have a couple things now on our voting. And one is determining the lease, the length of time we'd like to do the lease. And also authorize, first of all, get an estimate of repair costs, and then authorize up to a certain dollar amount, I would imagine. So,
One thing we could do is ask the property manager to give us a list, what needs to be done and what they cost and what the priority ought to be.
right,
You know, function as a property manager should.
Right.
We should, if we're in the interest of time, perhaps if we're voting on it, we should just pick a dollar amount that says we authorize the property manager to spend up to $5,000 on, all of these intermediate term repairs, and to contact us if that's insufficient, something like that, so that we don't have to talk about this again in a month when they could be fixing stuff tomorrow.
I agree.
And I like the idea of a year.
For
Rather
the
than
lease?
month to month, yes. They've been there how many years now?
Right,
And they've been good tenants.
they have been good tenants.
So I think give them a year so they don't have to worry about month to month.
Right, okay. So, any other, Matt, do you have anything?
I agree with the year. Yeah, I think that's good. The only concern I have is when you put a lump sum out there, there's not necessarily a tendency to do a little shopping. So it would be helpful to know what costs are before we approve them. That's kind of where I come from. So have the property manager go ahead and get some pricing, what has to be done, rather than just giving him a dollar amount to work with. I find that.
Pete, could we authorize whoever's, Rhonda as an example, or Melissa even, to, do that, and as long as it's less than $5,000 or something, some number, to just go ahead and approve it without us then having
You
to,
can put a cap on it, sure.
but to directly authorize Melissa to take care of that?
Sure.
Is that way the property manager will go shop and Melissa can just approve stuff as it comes through?
I just want someone looking at the numbers before we just give a number.
Yeah.
That's my
And I
concern.
will.
Yeah, Melissa and I can work together on that. We
Okay.
do quite frequently on other issues that have come
Mhm.
to the forefront of the property. So, okay. So, do I have a motion then? Would someone like to put a motion together?
Sure. I move that we approve a 12-month lease for the property at 58 East Orchard, and also to empower our director, Melissa Cleveland, to work with the property manager on minor repairs not to exceed $5,000. Second.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Rhonda Mitchell,
Yes.
Steve Meyer,
Yes.
Colin Meehan,
Yes?
Michael Thayer,
Yes.
Matt Roder.
Yes.
Joy Richards.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Let's see, what's next on our agenda? We have the City of Hayden request for Ramsey Road funding. Is that, Lisa, are you going to present?
If that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Appreciate the chance to come before you a month later after introducing the project last month. Just put together a black and white PowerPoint, hopefully provide you guys with some internal discussions that we've been having regarding funding as well as the project overall. So with that, I'll run through this and I'll answer any questions that you have across. Feel free to stop me if you'd like. I'd be happy to answer along the way. It's just a reacquaintance with the project. The city received approximately $4 million of federal and state funding to purchase right away. and design the connector road, this would be Ramsey Road. This is prior to design, or prior to construction, so we received these funds. As part of that requirement, the city would have to build a road in order to fully complete the project, or we face reimbursement of those funds. It's taken around 12 years, working with around 21 landowners to purchase the necessary right-of-way so the project could be constructed. So as we move towards construction, we've worked with the MPO. The city has been successful in having the urban funds allocate approximately $7.2 million. It's actually closer to 7.3. The city's match equals roughly, for the entire project, $578,000, which we'll use our circulation funds to pay for.
What are circulation funds?
They're impact fee funds.
The impact fee, okay.
In order to facilitate construction of this project, we broke it up into 2 phases, and that's to make sure that each one can be successfully completed, and that we could, in case we couldn't fund the entire project. And then the state and local agreement, it's imperative to note that that is required to be signed into by the city and the state by June of this year. Otherwise, we forfeit that $7.3 million goes back to the urban pot and used elsewhere in the state. So as it stands right now, and I believe you have the information that was submitted as part of the record, Phase 1B has approximately $3.2 million in eligible construction costs that HURA could fund. What I am trying to say with this is that when you consider 1B, where the north and southern portion of that project would be the property that's within HURA, could potentially fund up to $3.2 million. Doesn't mean we have to, it just means that that's what's eligible. And I was here for the workshop. I think it's worth noting, when you were talking about what the purpose of HURA was, and economic development being a strong component, in fact, a major component of what the urban area statutory authority was provided to urban areas across the state, was to look at economic development and the reduction of blight within communities. There's been some tug and pull over whether the infill projects were really, where economic development could really happen, is really a viable solution for urban renewal, but we found that across the state holistically, you're seeing that being a positive result for communities. This particular project has the opportunity to do infill, and that was presented to you at the last meeting, and I'm going to go over a quick summary slide showing the project extents. So the urban area, I didn't turn it on here, so I apologize, but it's essentially the 75-acre piece of property currently owned by Rad Properties LLC. In my previous presentation, we saw from a 2005 to 2024 timeframe of infill in this area, and what you saw with the use of urban renewal being a tool, a lot of these industrial properties grew as well as some of our road systems. So when we think about what urban renewal is meant to do statutorily and what it is doing, this is a prime example of what that can be. The city currently has $1.3 million in ARPA funds that are allocated to transportation projects and miscellaneous projects. Council has not yet approved the reallocation of those funds towards this project, but myself, on behalf of staff, intend to ask council to move funds for this. So just the quick numbers here, the total cost, this is all summarized in your information that was submitted to you ahead of the meeting today. 10.9 million roughly, this is our construction estimate, so we have not bid this project. We cannot bid this project until we have fully secured all the funds. Go ahead.
Is this for a section of the project or for the complete section?
Complete. And I appreciate that comment because council did receive a very similar presentation back in late February. And it was their direction to staff to see about fully funding the project. So staff has been looking at that as a fully funded project, but broken up into 2 phases as a safety net, I'll call it. So the state and local funds, just like I mentioned, just shy of 7.3 million. This is required to be obligated by June of this year. The HURA eligible cost, 3.2 million. That's for construction and land reimbursement.
and then the city's match at roughly 7.34%. That's 7.34% of the state and local funding, I have to be clear about that. Here's where we add some color. Again, the total construction costs, the state and federal aid, city's match, those are all similar from the previous. The previous cost savings, this was provided to you at the last meeting, was the cost savings from the Crawford Park as well as the Ramsey Road sewer extension project, gravity sewer project. So that 471, I know was mentioned in the last meeting, plus or minus, you know, Crawford Park is still underway, the gravity sewer is mostly complete. If we look at the potential ARPA reallocation, that's an if. Council authorizes that, then our funding gap is roughly 1.2 million. So the question that's before the body today, and we're asking for some clarity around it, is the city is asking as a means, because we are not bid this project yet, there's still a chance for the bids to come in greater than what we've estimated, that we would be asking for HURA to at least consider the maximum amount of construction allowed within 1B phase 1B, excuse me.
Can you say that comment again?
We are asking her to consider allocating the 3.2 million, which would be the maximum amount that could be spent in there under phase 1B, and that would be for those construction and acquisition cost reimbursements.
So the city then would take full control of 1A, and then you were asking HURA then to fund the B phase.
A portion of it. Yeah, I don't have those, I think you guys have the breakdowns in front of you about what the 2 phases cost.
Okay, I'll check my notes. Thank you.
1B, it looks like in total is 6.2, and so they're asking for a maximum of 3.2.
I want to be on the record saying I don't believe that the city will need all of that if we can reallocate, one, the funds that you guys have already provided to the city and other projects as cost savings, as well as our 1.2 in ARPA dollars for other construction projects that don't appear going to be constructed in the time frame that we have to spend that money in.
Can you give us maybe a little clarity on why the ARPA money why council has not already voted to commit those ARPA dollars towards this?
Partly it's my own education. I've been here just a short amount of time, so we've been trying to get clarity around those numbers from the previous administrator to me on what has been spent and what's been allocated. And we've now just correlated within the budget where those funds went and where they're sitting. And so that question just hasn't come before council because we've just learned of it recently.
And this would be ARPA eligible? I know there was a lot of restrictions on ARPA money.
It would be.
Okay. And then we've saved about $450,000.
471, yeah.
471, because Alan's doing such a good job managing that big project up there at the park. And so you're asking for essentially sort of the ceiling at 3.2.
Right.
Less the 450 that you'll save that we've already committed to other projects.
That's
less.
inclusive of that, right? So that 3.2 would be inclusive of that 471.
Okay.
Right.
So then it would be, how did you, go back to your previous slide, how did you get to 1.2 at the bottom, the gap?
It's really just all the green added up minus the total from 10.9.
So it has the savings, the previous savings in there, 471.
So,
But again, this is showing you a potential funding opportunity that the city council will eventually see, but your guys' commitment can be up to 3.2. So it just gives us a little buffer in the event that the price bids higher than what the construction estimates, or the engineer's estimate has been provided to us. We have recent numbers as of 1st of March.
Yeah, in
Ish.
February.
Timeframe. And admittedly, our last 2 projects that we did go out to bid for have come in under budget, which has been great. But at the same time, in order for us, and I was going to get to that just a minute here, in order for us to get this to a bidding state, the city has to take our gap funds and our match funds and submit it to the state, and that state and local agreement that we have to have signed by June. And then they'll bid that project, but they won't bid it till this fall.
So the funds, like, they move out of your, we can't commit to the funds, but the funds move out and into the state. So we have to write a check for whatever agreed upon amount today.
Whatever that difference would
And
be.
they take it and invest it somewhere until, into 2025, and they start using and allocating the funds.
Correct.
And how can you be assured that the funding will come back to the agency if the bids come in and it's?
So the state, I believe, and I'm going to look to the two engineers in the room who understand this better than me, I'm not an engineer, is if the project bids within 10% of the estimate, plus or minus, they'll fully fund it. So those funds, then that's when we would cut the check, I guess, something around those lines. I'm looking to them to help me understand that a little bit better.
We have to actually cut the check before the state will bid the project. So they actually, the funds do have to be actually in their hands.
So the funds have to be in their hands by June of
Yes.
this year? Okay, so
Otherwise-
on a short timeline there.
Yes. And then if they do not have the funds, they will not bid the project, which case then we would lose the $7.2 million that would go to some other project, and I don't know when it would ever come back.
So
So that's why we're splitting it in half, is to try to protect us from that happening. The A and B part, right? But we need to do the whole thing.
I have another question. So if there's a shortfall and the bids come in, so we send them the funds that they requested, and there is a shortfall, is there any other resources that the city can fall back on? Say if it's $500,000 short? I mean, because the percentage that the city allocated for this project is pretty small.
Yeah, admittedly, this is a project that, in discussions with the staff, and again, my short time that I've been here, I've come to understand is that there was the delay in this project was really tied to the land acquisition process that became extremely lengthy as it related to some of the property owners. And so the culmination of the funding of this project, along with the need to get it to the state, as far as that local agreement goes, just kind of came to this point where the city, we were left, I think, without the ability to fully know that it was going to have to be funded this year. So at this point, the city does have its impact fees that we are allocating to this as meeting our match requirement. And again, all along, our assumptions were the cost to do this would have equaled the cost of, with our match and the state and local funds, that total cost for doing the project, we've now seen increases of 30–40% since 2020, and this project started in 2012. So that has been a hard, I mean, as mentioned earlier in their workshop, it's the city's ability to tax for new construction, along with our O&M needs within the public works side of things, is a challenge every community within the state Idaho deals with. There's usually typically money or funds for new construction. Case in point is the $7.3 million that we do have authorization to use. The challenge then is O&M, paying for those long-term, and you'll see that's where we end up finding tension within our budgets, trying to figure out how to balance that. So we are here with money coming to this community by our state and federal government, and we feel that this particular connection project is a project that's worthy of consideration. So
When is council voting on the ARPA fund allocation?
at this point, it wouldn't be until the 23rd of April. It didn't make this agenda.
Did we, HURA, provide some money earlier to this project associated with some underground, maybe sewer?
Yes, same corridor, different project.
Say that again?
Same corridor, same right-of-way corridor, but different project. So it's not related to this construction project.
No, but we've already put some funds in to get this road project
sewer.
started.
Did the whole
Sewer.
sewer already, right?
Yeah, you
Sewer
funded
was
the sewer.
requested.
There was funds committed to get the sewer underneath the roadway before the road was to be constructed.
Right.
And that happened because the state came back and said they were gonna fund the rest of the project. And we didn't know that was happening, and all of a sudden we had to find a way of getting that done ASAP. And that's part of the reason that the funding's been difficult, because it was only it was less than a year ago that they told us they were gonna fund the rest of the project. We were trying to get all this work done before the project, and now we're finding that they don't have the funds to fund the entire project.
So that 471 savings, was part of it from the sewer?
Yes.
Do you know roughly the dollar amount?
46,000 plus or minus.
I'm sorry. how much?
46,000 plus or
Give
minus.
that breakdown.
The majority of the 471 is from
Park.
Park expansion.
Okay.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here. It's probably like $6,000 is all from somewhere in that number
Are you talking about sewer?
So
for the sewer.
No, we
how
already
much,
gave
how
it
much
back
did
as
we
well.
put up for this sewer supplement money?
How much was it?
How many dollars was it?
It's all in that,
It's 860.
That previous memo.
Lease.
I can't get to it.
470, the charge is 470. It's in that table.
The two parts of that phase of the project came up to about 470, which was the budget, and then total expenditures that you've already allocated towards it is around that 46,000 that she's referring to that was left. After everything was paid.
It was design and construction, so.
So in the end, what's the number? 470, did you say? So in addition to the money we're contemplating today, we've already put in $470,000 for this project.
That
If you say the
It's a-
project includes the road and the sewer.
Well, again, we keep them separate. The federal dollars that are tied to this project have nothing to do with sewer. So for us, they're separate projects.
Now we're looking at I guess Steve's referring to our HURA budget. How much has HURA already allocated towards the improvement, this road improvement, which the sewer needed to be done?
And I obviously wasn't here, so I don't know how it was told to you guys, but again, they're two separate projects.
It's 185
185.
for the design and 285, 791 for the construction, so it's 470, just like Natasha said. But like they were saying, we haven't, looks like we have a savings of not quite 10,000. Yeah.
Just 10,000, okay.
So maybe more around 460,
Okay.
it looks like.
Are we done funding the Crawford Park stuff?
Right.
Not quite.
So when we think about just our cash position, Melissa or anybody, do we still owe money to the city, or did we remove all that money?
We haven't moved it, no. We owe a bit, I think we owe quite a bit more on Crawford Park. They haven't.
I mean, to me,
The other thing we need to think about in the budget, if you're looking at the overall budget, is our commitment to our promissory notes for,
Yeah.
that also needs to be calculated in the overall cash flow budget.
I mean, there's only one promissory note, right?
Well, that's all that's been, but we have committed to how many additional? Melissa?
Rock Properties is a big one, but I'm pretty sure they won't
that
get
pays
fully
on
funded.
increment.
Pays out on increment, yeah.
From a money in the bank today perspective, those promissory notes are irrelevant because it's 75% of their increment.
Right, so it's money that's coming in that goes back out.
Coming into us, that's in the
They go
future.
out.
Yeah, it's.
True.
You're right.
But it's, from looking at our cash balance today, that's an irrelevant sort of use of funds because as it comes in, it gets paid out.
But it is
But
relevant.
the Crawford one is a liability,
Yeah.
is my point, right?
Yes,
So
true. We've only reimbursed,
we
it looks
paid
like.
80 grand
80
and
grand,
out of,
so.
1.3, so I mean, whatever, it's probably another $800,000 based on your cost savings estimates that will come out of our pocket for Crawford.
Mhm.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
Is that also inclusive of the cost savings, or is that total?
That's including the
all
cost
of it?
savings. There's $1.3 million allocation, 89 or whatever has been spent, minus the 400-ish, so.
Lisa, what's the basis of the calculation of the 3.2 when you say eligible? What does that mean?
Yeah, so those are gonna be your linear road costs. So, along that portion of right-of-way within the HURA district, as well as the land acquisition costs that we have into acquiring the RAD property right-of-way. Did I get that correct?
It's,
The property was just a little less than $1 million.
Right now, yes, it's around nine something, nine
I
and
want
some
to say
change.
960,000. And then we did a unit price breakout based on what the estimate dollars were. In other words, we don't have the bid dollars, right? So we took what the estimate was at times the linear footage curb times the square footage asphalt times the footprint of the road project that was on the RAD property that's inside the district. And that's the estimate of how much construction work will take place on that property along with the cost of the right-of-way.
So the eligible term comes from a pro rata allocation of the whole project that's inside the urban renewal district.
Right.
It was a little different than that, Steve, because it was actual like linear feet of curb, square yard of asphalt.
I mean, that's what they went through to figure out what portion was in the HURA. So it wasn't as simple as just a length.
Yeah, it was a little bit more detailed breakdown, but in a sense, it's a proportion, but it's not just a straight proportion.
And I believe, did those the numbers that we supplied?
I believe
Yeah,
so.
The
You did.
breakouts.
Yeah, and I went through them with Alan, and so there was different spreadsheets to have the quantities just within this RAD property, which is in the HURA district.
So I missed the last meeting. Was that part of the discussion at the last meeting that was a handout?
No.
We didn't have a discussion because it wasn't on the agenda, but in public comments, Lisa came up and kind of gave us an overview.
And I'd be happy to give you that handout that was given to
Well, let's get finished with this, but when we're done, never been in a meeting like this where there were so many dollars floating around without it all mapped out on a piece of paper. So when we do this in the future, let's start at the top, put all the numbers down, so that the whole picture's in front of us. This is really murky.
We're referring to the couple slides ago where you.
Yeah, really murky.
Because that slide, I think that's what you're referring to, Steve.
Well, and to get to the 470 number, there was a lot of calculator working on a piece of paper in front of us.
Yeah, I don't have necessarily an understanding of the
You're
previous
right,
agreements.
Lisa, and no, I don't either. That's my observation.
But again, we did provide that to the board members at the last meeting that showed those breakouts and what those amounts were estimated to be. So I apologize you didn't have that for today.
Chairperson, no matter what happens here today, we're gonna have to approve an agreement, a reimbursement agreement with the city. So it sounds like there might be need for some more clarity here, so perhaps we can just kill two birds with one stone and do that all at the May meeting. Because even if you approve a dollar amount today, we're still gonna have to approve that agreement, so.
Okay,
I would like to, sorry.
go ahead.
I'd like to come back to the ARPA point. So you're asking HURA for 3.2, and the city has 1.28, or something like that. Why not ask HURA for $2 million and have the city be on the hook for the remaining amount?
Again, that was an opportunity that, again, we just got clarity around within the last week.
I mean, and I'll tell you why I'm asking that. I mean, I personally am inclined to be positively, to view this positively. I mean, at the end of the day, this will help with traffic. I think it creates incremental commercial space, which, as we talked about in our workshop, can shift the tax burden from residential towards businesses, growing businesses in the city. I think is good for everybody. You know, certain members of the city council tend to not have a very positive view of urban renewal. Yet, anytime the city needs money, seems like the first thing that they do is come here. And, you know, and I think that this project should be funded. I think that we should do it. I might be the only one that thinks that. But I think council needs to maybe reevaluate how they view urban renewal agencies in general and what the urban renewal agencies are here to do, which is help the city of Hayden, in this example, with millions of dollars.
If you put up, it's your obligation to put up to the state people who are in control of the funds, the 10 million, roughly 11 million.
We have to put up the city match and the gap fund.
Yeah, because it's
So we have to put up the
7.3%.
578, 130 if we bid the project in its entirety, which we're hoping to do. Then we have to put up the 7.34% match plus any gap between
So
the
they have to put up all of it.
the 7.2 plus 5, $500,000, that difference between that and 10.9.
So is that number the 11 million?
The total would be 11. So it would be this minus, this minus from here, whatever that difference is, minus this, we have to pay this plus the gap, which would be 1, 2, 3 lines.
So the total that has to be put up is 10,917,000.
There, yes.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Sorry,
Yes or no?
Yes, the total that has to be put up is the 10.9. The current
But the amount that we have to write a check for.
federal obligation is only 7. City has to come up with any difference at this
Sure.
point.
So then the 417 is savings, and those are dollars from HURA supported projects like
Yeah.
Crawford and the other one.
471, but yes.
So the part for HURA here is 471 plus 1286.
Right.
471 we've already paid, 1286 is new money.
They wanted to cushion it in case it was cost overruns, and that's why they're requesting 3.2. That they could get by. Today, the snapshot, if I understand this correctly, the snapshot today is we mailed them a check for the difference of the 10,917,000, we're good to go. But what'll happen when they get the bid process, once they get the money and they put it in their savings account and they go to the bid process, if the bid runs higher, then the city has to make up the difference. And they're concerned because, you know, they only allocated the impact fees for this year. I guess the impact fees from previous years went to other projects.
So just to be clear, there's a correlation that has to be made, and we actually contract out with a firm to help us decide where we're supposed to spend our money. So it's where we're taking our impact fees in, they're being spent theoretically, and so they give us a breakdown, and this particular project had roughly the amount that we've allocated in our match as being why we were able to spend that. So it doesn't mean that we can spend all of our money there. We try to make sure that wherever we take our impact fees, those monies are going back into the roads in those areas.
So the impact fee collection process has a geographic connection to it,
In some cases, yes. Yeah.
neighborhoods or however you
Correct.
divide it up.
Yes, and we use a firm out of Western Washington to help us develop that criteria of where to spend that money.
So then what do you have in the way of other impact fees? Recreational ones, sewer ones?
So we don't take sewer impact fees, we have capitalization fees, and those are a separate fund altogether. They have to be tracked separately. We call them enterprise funds. The other impact fees that we take are parks, and those have to be used in parks, and we have a similar structure of where we can spend money and how much.
Can you borrow from those funds on a temporary basis and replace them in the future appropriation from the council?
The short answer is the state gives us that authority, but the long answer is it's complicated with how to create those intergovernmental agreements. And typically, depending on who the affected party is, if it's a ratepayer or a citizen, it can depend on how council moves forward there. And I've done that before in other cities, and we've moved away from it because of optics of how that looks if you're a ratepayer and not a citizen.
Can you go back to the slide with the map that shows the big parcel there, that parcel? It seems like we're building a road for this landowner, providing great access to his property, which should provide him substantial value. This rad properties that you referred to. So you mentioned some of the feedback that we get from city council and others about funding developers. I almost wonder, by providing the funding for essentially that partial of the road, would we have any negative impact for HURA giving developers funding for their profit?
I think it's somewhat of a loaded question in the sense that the city is already obligated to build this road. So in one sense, it's 6 one way, half dozen another, in my opinion. The funds to get it there really are what drive the output, which is economic development. So in my opinion, this is a proper place for her to be.
Let's elaborate on that a little bit. The 75-acre parcel goes down to the bottom of the screen
To the red line.
on the right side, right? So on the right side, there's about 1,700 linear feet. And on the left side, the west side, there's about 1,000. And so there's 2,700 linear feet there roughly. If this developer's dirt, now I'm talking about me with my developer's hat on. If that dirt's worth $2 a foot, as is, has only access on Lancaster, and doesn't have water and sewer, or electricity or gas, but they're all potentially available, it's worth X, whatever, $2 a foot times 75 acres. When this road is built, that property is probably worth, at the low end, $8 a foot, and maybe 15. It's exceptionally difficult to find properly zoned, serviced, bare development ground in Kootenai County. Exceptionally difficult. So if you take the value of that parcel and say, let's build 200-foot deep lots by 100-foot wide, all along the road on the west side, the left in our drawing, and all along the road on the right side to the east. And there's a pickup in value because of this project to that property owner of $6 a foot times however many square feet those lots are. I calculated that here somewhere. Those lots are 900,000 square feet, and that $6 amounts to $4.5 million. We have critics of urban renewal who will accuse us as being in cahoots with the development community, and that Hayden Urban Renewal is the sandbox for the developers. Of course, I repeat that because I'm a developer and it hurts. It's not true, but it's common accusations in our community. And it's a threat to the success of urban renewal at the conceptual level. So there will be critics, especially the social media crowd. I almost used the words clowns, but that's not fair. Crowd that Ed only knows too much about and probably doesn't like, who say we just built 4 rad properties, a Boise farm, a project which increases the value of their ground by $4.5 million. And so how do we defend, as an organization, what we're doing from the accusation that the principal beneficiary was this parcel because of its size and building this road. Now, we can't do much about it, as you point out, Lisa, today. But we can surely take comfort that we should learn that when we do this, if we can possibly engage the principal beneficiary to participate in the cost. That this road is basically a road to this property. Because on the other side of Honeysuckle, or other side of, yeah, is that Honeysuckle? Lancaster. Sorry, Honeysuckle's over here. Other side of Lancaster is grass fields. And on the right side, there's a residential project, but on the left side, there's nothing. I can tell you from doing this for 40 years that commercial development takes a long time. And although we have this remarkable population immigration, they aren't coming to build little businesses, they're coming to enjoy our lifestyle. And Ken Ela, down there in the lower right, spent a whole lifetime building those little buildings and turned it into a nice business, but it's taken a long, long time. And his project is perhaps Warren K. Park, it's called, one of the most successful in the community. So, to my colleagues here at the table, funding this as we were describing has an unintended consequence of a valid criticism that our money, as much as we think it might be virtuous, went to the enrichment of a particular property owner. I don't know who the people are who own it. I have no interest in that. I happened to look it up on the Secretary of State's site. It's the name of a guy in Boise that I don't know, so who knows? But the unspoken beneficiary has got a lot of money benefit. And my guess is if there were demand for commercial lots, Rad Properties would have built this road. But they're just waiting.
I think therein lies the challenge of any urban renewal agency is to take a risk. And the city has already evaluated this corridor as something more than just economic development, but economic development is certainly a part of that. I think that's why we're here. To me, would the answer or the question be posed differently if there were multiple property owners around here, the end result would be that potentially we'd see economic development happen.
And Lisa, you're absolutely right. If there were multiple owners, then the public, the possibility of the public saying HURA is the tool of the development community would be, the numbers would be so small that the argument becomes moot.
But I can
But
guarantee
with
you.
one property owner is
Yeah, I
difficult.
can guarantee you though, if it were multiple property owners, the cost of this project would be exceedingly more expensive.
You guys down south, sure.
Let me continue with your analogy or your math there. So if, you know, the dirt is $2 an 8 foot, whatever your math was, and it's gonna go up by a substantial amount. If the assessor is doing his job correctly, their tax bill will go up as well, right? Even if it's undeveloped.
Well,
It
that hasn't
will.
been the history of the assessment.
They
That
have
is,
a
I mean, that's maybe a
exemption
comment on
right
the assessor,
now,
but-
so they don't pay very much
Different
tax.
issue. What are you saying, please?
They have like an ag exemption right now, so they don't pay very much in tax, so it would be at the point where that got lifted.
I mean, with an ag exemption, they may pay property tax in the hundreds of dollars for 75 acres.
Yeah.
Because of the rules are really favorable for paying property tax considerations. So,
But we have seen that, so Rock Properties that hasn't built a lot of buildings, we are getting increment from that, because just doing the subdivision and building the infrastructure raised the value of
And
those lots.
those are zone commercial.
Those are zone commercial, so,
and the Rock property project's been underway for maybe 4 years, 4 years. But at least at looking at the ownership along the highway, most of those are still owned by Ron Rock. So the demand for commercial ground even with Highway 95 frontage and roughly 20,000 cars a day going by, is not strong. I mean, it's just a long, slow process here for commercial development to move forward. And your point, I think, is a good point, that as we encourage commercial development, it benefits taking some of the burden off of residential. But it's a very long process. Not a reason we shouldn't try, but so I just want to highlight to you that if we get in these again, sure be nice to have participants. And I would guess if this weren't coming, the rad guys had a desire, they felt the demand for commercial property was legitimate, they would have built the street.
So I hear what you're saying, we agree on those same scenarios internally. Is there a way to not do 1B and hold off and just do 1A and force the hand of the developer to build that road? I think the reality and the risk is still the same, right? We worry that it could take a long time, and we have a certain time frame that the clock starts ticking the moment we cut that check, or when we finish up one project and start the next one. We have 20 years to complete that project, otherwise we forfeit back to the state and federal government $4 million plus interest. So for us, I know that it's an area where we can come together and understand some shared values. We mentioned a few of those, the corridor being a strong component of that, getting traffic off our internal road systems, off the highway. We've already committed to doing this project, so we're here with the idea that alongside that, commercial development and infill could happen, which would be a benefit of the Urban Renewal Agency. So that, again, every risk you take, it has the potential for it to draw a long-term ROI on that, I get it. But we have a shared project, a shared interest in this area, and I feel like it's right for us to be communicating. And that landowner, if they were gonna come in, more than likely they'd be requesting, I could almost see them here requesting some level of commitment if the agency was still, or the district was still open, or they'd be requesting it through impact fees. So there still would be a component of shared values being had.
And another way to look at it, I guess, too, is that, we're gonna spend, anywhere from $1.28 to $3.2 million, depending on how we slice it, but you're looking at state and federal money of 7.3. I mean, it's a couple turns if you look at it as an ROI, just because the state is funding a lot of it. I mean, you spend 2 to get 10. It's not a horrible investment when you look at it that way.
Are there any other questions of Lisa?
I guess I just wanted to sum up
Sorry.
the what ifs. Again, if the city failed to construct the entire road, we would be liable or could be liable for reimbursement of all the design and property acquisition funds, which is roughly $4 million plus interest, and then we'll have to open there.
Is this a priority to the city because the $4 million reimbursement and the match, well, not match, just the money that the state and the feds are
Yeah,
providing to this?
I did provide I did get direction from council as a body that this was a high priority, and they sought for the city to find the funds. They felt it was easier to try to build and do it now than it would be to postpone that where we have increased costs. I mean, every year we see this jump. At some point we have to jump in or jump out, and they do not want to pay back that $4 million. So
Could they pay back the $4 million?
that's a good question.
So if we were to agree to the 1.2 million, does that work?
It could, yes.
Would
It definitely is.
The 1.2 plus the 471.
Plus the 471, so
Right, that we
1.6.
And ideally-
spending but haven't spent.
Yeah. If we could provide some cushion just in case.
And then that would force the city council to allocate the funding if they feel this project is a low priority and necessary through their.
If I didn't
Which I
think
think
I would
is
be
worth it.
successful there, I wouldn't have brought it
I
here.
think, yeah. So, Joy, any questions?
I have one, if you could just address, I know we talked about the economic benefit to the developer and the cost of the road and how that would enhance his bottom line. Could you address how important this is? Because we have Ramsey Road that, starts down at I-90 and going north. This is a continuation of a parallel road to 95 and what that brings to the table as far as moving traffic through the city.
Yeah.
I think we need to be looking at that aspect of it, because it is a major concern, of course, for our citizens is traffic and moving traffic. We know a lot of the growth outside the city of Hayden is causing problems, traffic problems within the city of Hayden. So is this one way that will help alleviate that traffic?
It's been a known understanding, I think the engineers could substantiate this for me, that the way to reduce traffic on our roads is to provide more alternatives. So if we want to reduce traffic on the highway, or we want to reduce the number of short movements, is to provide a more connected transportation system. And the grid system is the most effective way of doing that. The closest north-south corridor is HURA Road, which is 2.5 miles away. So as we look towards the highway, this is a logical place for another connector to sort of relieve both the HURA corridor as well as the highway system to stop those short movements. And admittedly, we did the same thing up in Bonners, and it worked successfully. So I do know that once we are able to connect this, it will produce the results, desired results. Whether it's in tandem with more traffic coming to Hayden, it's hard to know, but I do know that it won't. We'll see less movements on Highway 95 for those short turns. So I'm happy if that doesn't answer. I'm sure you could probably back me up.
I know, Lisa, this is not something you're involved in because you're new here, but the state has been, Alan can probably help me here, has been trying to make the control system along Highway 95 allow the traffic to flow in platoons for 10 years, and they keep adding stuff. They've now got video traffic sensing stuff at the intersections, and they have fiber the full length, and they have computer software and processors, which I understand are always a ride around the corner to working, but it still doesn't work yet. And so when we think about allocating public money, for example, fixing the rest of Ramsey Road between Prairie Avenue and the end of our project now, the state could just get the platoon traffic timing to work. And you know, cities have done this with electromechanical controls 50 years ago. And this 95 has the capacity to handle a lot more cars. If we could just get them going, flying in flight together.
But that only works if you're all moving in the same direction. If we're taking short turns, if we're coming off of Honeysuckle and turning back onto the cross street there.
Prairie.
Well, I was thinking the one where,
Orchard.
Lazy.
But you're right.
anyways, pick whichever one, but if you're taking the short movements and you're trying to, now you're using those turn lanes, you're now in that queue, and it does take longer. So if we can avoid those short movements, if I'm trying to get from point A to point B and I have another connector.
We can, but if the accusation made by Manny, my friend Matt included, just did it an hour ago, and it's not an accusation, it's a statement, thank you, Matt, but that a lot of the traffic problem comes from people outside the city of Hayden. And I don't know of any data, but I'm willing to accept that as true. If we could get them to flow down 95 so everybody knew that 95, once you get on it, would work, rather than go 2 lights and stop because the present city or state traffic engineer has given priorities to the side approaches as opposed to the through traffic, it would work better. But it just seems to be an elusive problem, and so
And
if you
in
have a
our
chance to
opinion,
push on the highway department, do it.
and our opinion is that we can fix what we can currently have control over, which is our side streets and corridors. And you see the value and the priority that the city has placed this in by me being here tonight, that they find that to be a significant importance to them. So with that, I'd be happy.
I wonder if anybody would like to make a motion at this point, or have additional questions, or...
Before I make a motion, I think I stated, in my opinion, it is that we should fund it. I also think that the city should use their ARPA funds to fund it, and so we should make up that gap, and you know, we can discuss that more, but what's the exact number that we would need to make a motion for? I don't know if this is a P question or not, to allow that, but to also require, you know, if the city wants to do it, they need to put up the money on the ARPA funds, because it's not $3.2 million. It's a,
Well,
it
it was
less than-
1.286
Is
or
that the
something
right-
like that,
In-
was the
Plus the
number.
471.
Plus the
right?
471.
Plus the, you would have
So
to,
it's
so,
it's the addition of those two numbers.
So let me
1,
ask you,
2,
Melissa,
8,
the
6,
471,
2, 7,
we've already
5.
allocated to them, right? That's the
Yeah, we
471.
have, and so
Do
it
we
would
have to add it
be,
back in because they're supposed to refund us, or how would that work?
yeah, well, I guess we can talk to Pete. We can either amend
It
those
would
other
be
agreements.
good to specify, if you're gonna approve that amount of funding, it should be specified in the motion.
So that's round numbers, let's just call it $1.8 million, inclusive of the 471 in savings from other projects. Would that be close, good, close enough?
I think like that would be more than
Yeah, that's
the 1.67.
1286 plus
1286.
471, 1.757.
Yep, I rounded up.
Geez, no, this is the number.
Again, this is estimated construction dollars, we'll know more when it bids, but we can't know that until we're putting it in.
2 mils is a nice round number.
So with that number, where's our cushion if it goes over that? How would we deal with that?
So the state will fund, if the overage is within 10%, they will fund it. But
Well,
anything in excess of that, we have to fund.
They won't fund it. They'll award, and we will have to fund that excess.
Oh, we will, okay,
Yes.
sorry.
So the question is, how do we deal with that? Do we deal with that now, or we're gonna have to go wait and see?
When you say we, are you referring to the city?
Yes, everybody. How do we deal with it? Because it is a combination. As how,
Well,
if we need the buffer, where's the buffer gonna come from?
I mean, I think the reality is it's gonna come from us, but I would prefer to have that discussed at a different meeting, just so we know the exact number.
and then I also would like to, with this large request, is gonna impact other future infrastructure requests. So,
How about if we include in the motion, we're able to get to a motion, the caveat that the city won't come back to HURA for traffic money until 2028. So the traffic money sandbox is closed until the city decides how are we going to fund what it really costs to run a city,
Which is,
property taxes.
and are you gonna promote that?
I will, because I may be one of the largest property taxpayers in the county, in the city, and I would be happy to go on record and say, we'll pay more.
Steve, I
If I do that, would you support it?
No.
Then we got the problem.
Well, Steve, I like where your heart is at it. The problem that we run into is that, the district sunsets, and I would rather spend the money on, helping the city despite the lack of budgeting than to give it back to the other taxing districts.
but we were just in a workshop and, one of your priorities is to enhance parks and so on. And if all of our funding goes to roads and sewers, then we don't have the ability to fund open spaces and community centers and things that the citizens also find important in the community.
Oh, I agree. I just think that saying no more roads after this until 2028 is just potentially hamstringing us. Depending on what, we don't know that a community center is coming. We don't know that the district is expanding.
And don't we have the
Within our-
opportunity to say no as each project comes up too?
Correct.
You don't have to accept every project. There might be some that are more important than others.
But what I'm trying to do is
A message.
communicate to the council that there's a real problem associated with revenue. And as you forecast out 5 and 7 years in the city, how long can we defer the reality that it costs more to run the city in a responsible way than we have revenue to support? We can put it off a long time, and we have, almost as long as I can remember. But it's not forever, it's not a forever solution.
And the political, the demographics of who's moving here and what the attitudes are towards taxes and the age of people moving to our community And I'm just saying that to raise taxes is a very, very difficult thing to pay for the infrastructure needs for the city. And it's up to the people to decide that they're gonna have to decide that. And I say that's a really high hurdle to jump over, Steve. And so I try to be realistic about this.
Why is that different than Post Falls and Port Lane?
Well, for example, the last time I looked at it, our levy rate compared to Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, and Rathdrum, their levy rates were 4 to 5 times higher. So they have a lot more taxes to deal with than we do. And so is your question, why don't people want to be taxed more?
No, my question is, as you allude to, the political reality is elected leadership has to be pragmatic about this, and it may involve politically falling on your sword to do the right thing. And maybe that's too much to expect, but the history of our previous councils has been exactly as you were advocating. Let's keep this low as long as we possibly can.
So should I represent the voice of the people or not?
Well, then how do we balance the voice of the people that I want better streets, but I want somebody else to pay, because I don't want to pay. So then there's a spiral that some communities suffer. I was on a governor's council here a number of years ago trying to deal with all the communities less than the big 7 in the state. And so we heard from a lot of mayors and a lot of city councils who said the cost to rebuild our water system to meet the DEQ's standards is greater than the assessed value of my town. So what do I do? I mean, at some point in time, all of us have to step up to the reality about what it costs. And it's a noble objective to defer it as long as possible. But when is the time come that we can no longer do it?
I think we should focus, a good conversation, but we really need to, time is running out, and we need to, if there is somebody who would like to make a motion.
Michael, the number, if you were gonna make that motion you were talking about earlier, is 1.755 million, inclusive of the cost savings anticipated.
What's the number, 1
755 is what I get when I add up the cost savings. Oh, wait, is that, what it, just a second, Lisa, you might have to help me.
I got 1.756, but
Okay.
around a different.
But that's, are we using the wrong number there?
I ignored the last 3 comma, I just added up the thousands.
Okay.
So the two numbers would be the remaining gap funding and the previous cost savings.
Okay. I think I was using the wrong one then.
And I can make it
1.28, sorry, it's hard for me to see it. 1.286 plus 471, right?
I have 1,757,362.15.
How about 1.76?
That works. That's good.
So before we go to that motion, I
Yep.
just want to be clear that if more money is needed to complete the project, is that going to come back here at a later date to the HURA board to ask for more money?
I think it should go back.
How's that going to work?
I think it should go back to the city council.
It's gonna go to the city, and then the city's gonna say, well, we don't have any money, go ask HURA, is my guess. But in the meantime, the city hopefully will find some other sources of funding, or I don't know how long this project will take, or whatever it might be.
I mean, it's 2 years before it probably will go to bid.
And costs are going to go where?
Bids this fall, construction next year, isn't that
Yeah,
what it was?
construction next year, so this fall.
So I just want to make sure, Lisa or Alan, if 1.755 does that put us in a dilemma? I mean, does it put us in a place where we can't complete? Or does this do what we need to be done now, and we're just kind of kicking the can down the road until we find out how much it's gonna all cost?
Our best guess is what the engineer's estimate that was given to us, that it'll come in at bid, but there is a contingency built into that, so hopefully there's some give and take. but-
What's our risk at 1.755 is my question.
You have no risk as of today. You have risk that when it actually gets under construction, it goes over or under, but agreeing to more money now doesn't do you any good. They have to write a check for the $10 million, whatever it is,
Yep.
to the state to have it bid. This is the money that gets them to be able to write that check to bid it.
So it secures us for this project, so we don't have to pay the state back or the feds back. So that's a good.
Otherwise you owe $4 million.
Right,
Where's
right.
that money coming from?
So that doesn't create a problem, but, so then the only issue I have in my mind is, you know, where the costs gonna end up at, and I guess what we're,
It's not known.
with this motion, we're
It's
just
not
gonna
known.
have to wait and see.
Yeah.
What was the answer, Lisa and Alan, about the 10%? I heard you two talking about
I'll let him
it's
talk,
the
'cause I said it
project
wrong.
people paying
So-
for an override if it
So
occurred, overrun.
Under the state and local agreement, we have to put in whatever the engineer's estimate is. This is not the final engineer's estimate, but it should be very, very close. When that goes in, they will bid the project. When the bid comes out, they will award any contract bid that's within the engineer's estimate plus 10% or less.
They will fund it.
They'll award it, and then the city will fund it. We'll be obligated to fund that.
So if the.
So if it were to go over, let's say it's $10 million, if it came in $11 million, the city would have to find that additional 10%.
10% of the
Oh.
million.
Oh,
Yes, of the 10
10%
million.
of the 10 million.
Another million.
10% of the 10
Another
million.
million, okay.
Yes.
So they would award it, but
Automatically awarded.
it doesn't change the size of the grant.
The state.
No, it does not change. The
It
grant
comes
is
up, yeah.
a completely separate process.
Mhm.
And it's actually the KMPO, and they have to, it's dollars that they get from the state, and then it gets shared with all the MPOs in the entire state. And of course, we have a couple of new MPOs that haven't gotten any money yet, and that's part of the challenge, right? They're going, we've never received any dollars, and yet there doesn't seem to be any. So that's kind of where some of these funding issues are coming from, right? I mean, it's a statewide issue.
So Matt's question is very valid, that the 10% number is only a safety mesh. If the whole thing comes in at 13 million, then it can be called off.
If it comes in at that point, then yes, they will not automatically award it. They may either, there's a number of things, and I don't know what they all are because I haven't dealt with this in a while. Maybe Melissa remembers, but they will actually go back and look at the project. They'll look at a number of things, but I don't know what that answer frame that we're going to bid this. So just to kind of give you an input, this will probably go to bed in late summer. It will not be constructed more than likely until next summer. So that maybe utilities will get relocated, but that makes a very favorable bidding environment for a contractor because they're looking at next season, right? So we're hoping that
Sure, timing is right.
the timing's right? But again, we don't have, our crystal ball is not any better than probably the next person's, so.
If the bids come in greater than 10% over that, does the city still owe the $4 million back to whoever it goes back to?
I don't have that answer. Good question.
Yeah, the short answer is, if we don't build it within the certain time frame, then we will have to pay back that money.
Regardless of bids or?
At some point, 20 years from when we purchased right-of-way, this project has to be done or the city is liable to have to pay that money back
20 years.
from when the right-of-way was purchased.
And when was the right-of-way purchased last year?
It's been about a year and a half, so you got about 18 and a half years. from today's time frame.
Do we still have some uncertainty with some reluctant right-of-way owners?
No. We still have negotiations, but we have secured the right-of-way.
But we've secured the right-of-way, but how much we're going to have to pay for it is
A
uncertain.
little bit up in the air, yes.
So these numbers, the 10,917,000, is there a contingency number on right-of-way purchase built into that?
This is for construction only. So it's not for right away.
Yeah, the 4 million was the
So the,
acquisition.
So if those negotiations turn out to cost more on the
that's
right-of-way
an additional cost on the city.
where does that money come from?
That will have to be determined.
Because those are all outside of the district.
The money that was, the excess money that was in right-of-way got rolled over into construction. So this number, the 7.289, includes what is anticipated not to be needed out of the right-of-way dollars back into the project, right? So we have 2 properties that are unresolved. We have an appraisal on one that we think is a fair assumption where that's going to end up, but the other one is still in the early negotiations, and I can't tell you if it will go up a lot or little or not at all.
So if the seller just refuses, the choice becomes condemnation?
We already have possession of the property. So that if he refuses to negotiate, the deal would be the courts would help us, tell us what that negotiated dollar amount is.
Same outcome.
They will intervene on how we get to the end dollar amount. How's that?
Hard to know. Okay, thank you.
And there's no negotiation on RAD property at this point, that's done?
There is.
That's still ongoing.
The answer was that that's done on the red property?
The negotiations are not done.
Oh, they are not done. Oh,
But
that's different than, so let's back up there. Is there an appraisal for that property?
there's been 2 appraisals on the RAD property. There's a current appraisal that they have been brought to. They had a counteroffer. We had the property reappraised. That offer is in their court.
And is the second appraisal lower than their counteroffer?
Yes.
So in fact, my earlier discussion about a beneficiary of this project, where the beneficiary is not being very accommodating to the common interest of getting this road built.
We are working under federal guidelines and laws for land acquisition and state laws. We don't have a lot of latitude there.
No, I wasn't asking about you, I was asking about them.
Okay.
Sounds like they think they're not getting much value out of it, so maybe we're not benefiting them as much as you might.
Or they're just pretty smart negotiators.
Um,
So in my earlier example about the exposure HURA gets from what is squabbling over the price.
City is obligated to pay fair market value.
Sure.
That is where we're at. We are not 1 penny above that at this point. In those
But there's not an
discussions.
agreement on FMV.
Pardon?
There is no agreement on what is FMV, fair market value.
We have an appraisal that assigns that number. That's where the city's at.
But that's not where the landowner is.
Well, we don't know that yet. We're hoping that that's where he's at. We're waiting for a response, Steve, from the landowner.
So what'll happen, if I understand the math, is that if the city has to pay more than fair market value and they can't come to an agreement to complete this road, that state and federal aid fund will be reduced because they have allocated the additional funds from the 4 million for the land acquisition into that number. See, that is a new piece of information that we didn't know about until just recently. So if they end up paying more for that land, that number could change from 7.3 to 7.1 or something along those lines.
That number won't change, the gap funding will change. So, but again, we're obligated to pay fair market value, so to pay above and beyond that is not an easy task.
So the gap funding is the city match. Is that what you refer to as the gap funding?
It's a shortfall.
The remaining.
Oh,
The 1.286.
so
So,
the city, yeah, okay,
okay.
got it. All right.
Everybody ready? All right. I move to approve funding for the Ramsey Road project that the city requested in the amount of $1.76 million, including all of our cost savings from previous projects. Okay.
In addition to the preparation of an appropriate agreement to that effect,
Say that again?
including the preparation of an appropriate agreement to that effect.
Including the preparation of an agreement to that fact.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote?
Rhonda Mitchell,
Yes.
Steve Meyer,
Yes.
Colin Meehan,
Yes.
Michael Thayer,
Yes.
Matt Roder,
Yes.
Joy Richards.
Yes. Thank you.
So I want to be sure that we've made it clear that at least this board member is not very anxious to see more road project requests for a while. The city simply has to figure out a way to fund them yourselves.
Well, my concern is, and I brought this up, we had the list of these are the things, and every time there's another item that's never even been mentioned or on the list that comes up, so this is a,
It'd be interesting to go back and listen to the recording of the meeting about the sewer fall under the sewer money. And was the question asked, is this all there is for us in the Ramsey Road project?
if I remember, it was taken care of, but we would have to go back and,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
the sewer funding was a similar one, just that there was a bunch of federal money. It costs more, you know, the city either loses $2 million or we just help them out, something like that. It's a very, very similar story, let's put it that way.
I'd like to just state that we're dealing with tax money. It's people's money, and roads are important. And I fully support HURA's use of money to fix our road issues as a priority.
thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have an agreement with the city of Hayden for the Come Together Bench program with the Arts Commission.
Yes, so this, you had a presentation on at our last meeting. You agreed on the amount that's in this agreement. And this agreement is, I believe, also on the city council's agenda for tomorrow night. So if you remember, they need the money because the benches need to be ordered by June to get the matching funds. And so this agreement should be just what you guys agreed to at the last meeting.
There was a piece, the request came from the Arts Commission,
Yes.
and it had a statement in there that HURA had agreed to some formula-driven arts thing. And that was done when our friend Nancy Sue Wallace was the chairman in the first HURA board. And we did that.
Mhm.
But in a subsequent HURA meeting, we amended that and said that HURA didn't want to take on any broad obligation to fund arts. We would do it one at a time. So I want to be sure that I remind Melissa in particular that the original language that had Nancy Sue Wallace's footprint on it, bless her heart, because she was a real advocate of the arts, and I respect that. And I am too. But that the rest of the HURA group decided later that that formula would be changed, and that we would do it year by year.
So that, I believe it was only fiscal year 2016 that
So
that
we have been
5% was
allocating that
designated.
5,000 per year on our budget,
Yeah,
haven't we? So-
yeah.
Yeah,
So this is above that, obviously.
we have,
But it was not our intention to make that cumulative. Our intention was just to take each one as we go, like this one. So I'm just clarifying that the assumptions that the writer who crafted that memo, that we had taken on a broader percentage appropriation for the arts as part of all of HURA budgeting was changed.
In your audit from last year, it talks about that there was this amount of money that was designated in 2016 for arts. I have not gone back and read all the minutes from 2016, but that's what this agreement is referencing.
well, we have $37,000
Yes.
in that sort of
That fund-
line item that was created back in the old days.
Yeah, so that's where that number came from, is what our auditor was saying, that we have, I think it's just like, I can't remember the exact wording, but it's funds that are designated for something, and it said that arts was this amount based on, you know, what was allocated back in 2016. Okay.
So, I think we need to make a motion, this is an action item, to approve this. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the contract with
What's
the
the
art
number?
commission.
The number's $57,000 or the?
We were contributing 24,000, I believe, half.
It's 24, the total amount is about 48, but there's a matching program that the manufacturer has. And so it's essentially half, we put in half.
I move we,
Oh, you missed the last meeting. We talked, yeah, so we approved this at the last meeting. This is just.
so it's done.
Yeah, this is just the contract authorizing what we've already approved. So it's.
So it's the 24,410.
It's 9 benches that are coming prime and ready to paint.
Yeah, and I read that part. So what is the action item for today? We've already
To
approved
sign the
money.
To
contract
sign the
with
contract.
with the arts
Does that
commission.
need to be an action item, which we've already approved the money, don't we just sign it?
We need to approve the contract.
This didn't exist at the last meeting.
So we're approving the contract, just like next meeting, we're gonna approve the contract with the city over the funding of the, so. Okay, I'm sorry,
I said, I move that we sign the contract with the arts commission for the expense for the benches.
Second.
any discussion? Roll call vote?
Rhonda Mitchell,
Yes.
Steve Meyer,
Yes.
Colin Meehan,
Yes.
Michael Thayer,
Yes.
Matt Roder,
Yes.
Joy Richards.
Yes.
All right, next on the agenda, our executive director.
Yeah, so I had a memo in your packet, nothing new on the OPAs for Hayden Pickleball or Marketplace at Miles. They're both in their court. I check in every now and then, but it's literally in their court. So I also attended that tax commission conference that we've been talking about for the last couple of months. It was really good at the end of March. I also have a binder that has a lot of good information in it, so if you have questions or ever want to see that, let me know. We did close on the Owl Cafe, as you all know. Steve and Colin and I walked through it last week, and I included some of the pictures. Yes, it looks like they cleaned out the fridges and left. Everything's there. It's pretty wild, so we'll have to kind of decide what to do with some of that, but we can talk about that later. And then the other thing that happened is that council did decide to move forward with the eligibility study for the expansion of the district. They decided to move forward with areas A, B, E, F, and K. And so I gave you the map so you'd remember what those areas are. And so I don't know anything more than that, except that they've, were asking if I knew, recommendations on who could do that study and that kind of thing. So they're
So
working
they're moving
through
forward
that
to get that study
process.
ordered, right?
Right. So you remember that that was the next step, is that they would have to go determine that these areas are in fact eligible, and then could go through the motions.
But we're not involved in that. The city's going to do it.
We're not involved until they at least determine if they're eligible.
Actually, we don't get involved until the area is declared deteriorated, which is why you get the eligibility study, because that tells you whether it's eligible to become deteriorated, and then once they make that determination, then we can get more involved in preparation of the plan, or amending the plan and expanding the boundaries.
Is there an option to change these locations for the city? As they're going through that process, can they change the shape, move it?
Yeah, nothing's set in stone yet.
Okay, I guess the reason I ask is, honeysuckle is way out of the way, but there seem to be improvements needed there, but we missed it on our map, so.
Honeysuckle?
Sorry, the beach department.
Oh, I don't think that we could get down there within the 10% rules. Yeah, that's too, it would have too much area.
I thought the city was focused on the city park down there, to allocate some funds for improvements. One time, the city council meeting, so they even changed their.
So that's what I know. If you have any other questions or.
Let's see, our next meeting is scheduled for May 13th. Put that in your calendar. And I move to adjourn.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
great conversation today at our meeting.